Hi, Robyn.
Hi,
Happy
Jeanine.
Friday.
Happy Friday.
We are again at the Friday debrief.
Yes, I know. And I was mentioning to you, I think we should call this episode Full Circle because I really feel this week from our last three episodes, we came full circle.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really excited to unpack this. So, first of all, I want to thank you for all the great work you have done with this writing unit. I could not have imagined that we would have made such tremendous progress with these students in such a small amount of time. I'm actually excited for the first time in my entire career. I'm excited about the upcoming NJSLA testing because I am very curious to see if they're able to transfer all the good skills that I know that they have gained onto the testing. And I thought today, if it's okay with you, that we could take a look at one student, the one target student who we have been working with. You know, we picked one student who we knew was very diligent, who had good attendance, who, but still needed some work on skills. And we've been using that student as our benchmark student. So if we could take a look at where she started and then just kind of talk through the process, I think that might be a good place to start.
Like I said, going full circle with this, I really want to show you where we started and where we came to now this week, only after a short period of time with implementing these strategies that I thought of on my own, but also were enhanced with the use of our AI tools that we've been talking about.
Right. So tell us a little bit about, I don't know if you can make that any larger at all, Robyn, just so people can see it. But
Sure.
I think this was the student's very first writing sample. This was before you had done any instruction. And if I'm not mistaken, the task here was to explain 2 or 3 ways that the Kill 'em Bear Center helps sick or injured bears, like the 2 cubs from the article, and they had to use detail from the text in the answer. So this paragraph was what the student did in, how long did the student have to write?
Well, usually we always give them about 45 minutes to write.
Okay, so from reading the article and planning, was
Correct.
reading the article included, or they had already read the
Nope,
article?
they already read the article, and then we, say plan for 10 minutes about, and then write for the rest of the remaining time, and then leave your last 5 minutes to edit and check.
Okay, so as you can see just from this, it's very short, right? So there's not
Yeah.
a lot of volume there, but the student writes a pretty good topic sentence. The Kill 'em Bear Center helps 2 bear cubs survive. I know this because in the article, The Baby Bear Rescue by Tricia Culligan and Lane Folk, it states dog food giving has all, what's that? Dog food giving?
Dog food giving. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, dog food giving has all the vitamins oh yes, giving dog food to them has all the vitamins that the cubs need. So the student is making an effort at stating a claim and giving some evidence, even going into proving why what she has stated is correct.
Yep.
Trying to back it up with a little bit of thought, but if you scroll down a little bit, I see your AI comments underneath. It gave us some areas of strength and areas for growth. And of course, right off the bat, elaboration.
Yes.
Right? Comes up with elaboration. That was a common theme for all of them. And really, when we were looking at these pieces, we could see that ourselves as teachers.
Sure.
So my question for you is, how was the AI feedback helpful to you, if that's something that you can already see as a teacher looking at this writing?
Right. And exactly. So a lot of my students, coming from 2nd to 3rd grade, needed support in the, one of the biggest reasons, things for them to do with writing was elaborate on their ideas and elaborate on the claim that they're trying to prove. So every time I was putting it into, ChatGPT, it would be giving me different examples of ways to elaborate, things to elaborate with. So when we started out, and I'm just going to share this, we started out writing in 3rd grade. I know that we've talked a lot about the iced tea method, and that actually was a method that I came up with the help of a 5th grade teacher in the district, because I wanted to know where they needed to go. I had taught 5th, but kind of bring it back down to a 3rd grade level and use a fun iced tea kind of, acronym to have them really understand the writing process. So we use the iced tea.
Talk us through that iced tea. I stands for?
The I stands for to introduce. And of course, you restate and you reflip the question. C is when they put in their citing their evidence. I know this because, where their pages, what the quote says, their claim. The E, before we had our MMMs in there that we talked about in the last episode, which I'll kind of bring full circle this episode. It was, this means, this shows, this proves. And then that's explaining the quote. And then our thoughts are our final thoughts, restating the introduction again. And that's our in conclusion statement. When I was running this student particularly piece through, it was coming up elaboration. And I know me and you had sat down and we were talking about the class, and we're saying, what, they're writing, they're giving us some feedback, they're writing elaboration, but what are they missing? And we figured out with ChatGPT's help that it was those 3 connecting examples of evidence that they needed to connect back to that quote. And that's when we use ChatGPT's idea and put it with the iced tea method to make it sweeter of make it your own. What does the quote literally say? What does it mean, that quote that you're citing in your evidence? And why does this matter? And that's when we came up with those 3 MMM sentences to put it back to the quote. So this piece of writing was before we implemented the MMM.
Can we go back to the student's writing again? Because if you look at this writing, it's clear that the student is following that iced tea structure.
Absolutely.
But it's not leading to good writing. And again, we've talked about this a lot, our struggle with this, we're doing such formulaic writing here. And yeah, it was formulaic and not that great because it was missing that depth of thought. And, but we had something to build on now. The student knew the structure. We knew how to state a claim. We knew how to pull evidence from the text. And so I think it was very helpful to run it through the writing feedback generator or even ChatGPT to hone in on that elaboration skill. And then we could riff with ChatGPT for the best way to teach them that. And I just love the clever idea. You are great with analogies. So taking this iced tea method, making it sweeter by adding in, more evidence, and then adding in this which are the 3 M's to elaborate. I think that really helps. So do you have another piece that shows the student attempting
I do
to apply that?
Yes, let's go to the second piece, which was not too much after that piece. But here's the second piece of writing. And again, you can see that it kind of follows, again, that iced tea method. They're doing exactly what they should be doing according to the iced tea method. They're restating the book, the title, the page. They're giving the text evidence. Lightning strikes a tree. There's their quote. This means that the setting is stormy because of the lightning hit the tree. This matters because it shows that there's a thunder and lightning storm. So they're following all of those sentence starters that we're giving them, but they're still missing that bringing it back to what does that quote actually, why does that quote matter to this one happens to be the setting of the storm.
Right. And we added in, prompts that had to do with the setting, because I do think that's the kind of thing that would show up on a standardized test, not just talking about how the character changes, but, how does the author use the pictures and the words to describe the setting. Things like that are pretty common on standardized testing.
For sure. And some of this feedback, again, and I love how ChatGPT and Magic Schools kind of gives the feedback, because this happens to be feedback from Magic Schools. They give the strengths, they give the, areas for growth. But as you can see, it's still adding more specific details. What are other words to describe to create this storm setting? So that's still that connection back to the original prompt and the claim that they're trying to prove was still missing. So this piece of writing also scored a 2. So then we kind of went back and we said, okay, now what can we do for them to get to that next level, which was obviously the 3 for 3rd grade. And I have another piece of writing here as well, just to kind of, show you again how the transition of this journey happens. So now we add in the MMM, and we try it out with the students, and you can see that their elaboration is getting longer,
Mhm.
a little bit more in detail, a little bit more in depth. This means that Bob is domestic and has an owner, Julia. Further, and this again was based on the One and Only Bob book. A little bit more specific, kind of going back to that quote, that claim, that text, but still not exactly what we were looking for. So here's my areas of strength. It was clearly identified. My response was the introduction. It was organized. So this student is doing a really great job. But again, do you see, this is where it like drew me in. Try to explain more deeply how your evidence supports your point. So then I really went back and I took my my Linkit data that they had just completed with the a benchmark test in our district, and I asked them, kind of what kinds of questions are they not answering correctly? What are they scoring low on? And I kind of ran those questions through, and I got from ChatGPT just different kinds of things to have them think about, to be kind of out of the box thinkers, to describe characters in the story. So just fun, like little, things to kind of put into their class, small groups, to target instruction a little bit more. And from there, I took their writing data as well as this Linkit benchmark data.
Robyn, if I could just
Yeah,
interrupt for a
sure.
moment, because just to clarify, the Linkit benchmark data is a reading assessment. So I just think it was interesting to me that you chose to pick the reading assessment, because really I think what it was boiling down to was how well were they comprehending and understanding the story that they were reading about to write off of it. So that strong connection between their reading comprehension and then their ability to write well, they needed to be able to think deeply about what they were reading so they could write deeply about it. And so I think it was very clever of you to run the Linkit data and the writing data together. So I just wanted to interject and share that.
Yeah, for sure, please. And you know what? That's what my thought was exactly like. I know that they're trying to do a really great job. This student is really focused and on task and really trying to do a great job. But I just knew as a teacher, there's just something missing, right? So my job is to say, okay, what is missing? How do I get this student from point A to point B? So let's look at all of the different areas in ELA, right? So one is comprehension. The other one is the writing piece. So I merged those two sets of data together, and I got different kinds of strategies to now a 5-week plan to help these students stay on track in order to meet the benchmark for the NJSLA within the next 5 weeks and counting for the NJSLA. Based on their Linkit data, their writing sample, this kind of gave me a cohesive kind of straight point to what to do for the next 5 weeks. So I decided to stick to it and to try some of it. One thought from this 5-week plan from ChatGPT was for them to really go back and edit their work. And although they're putting in the MMM sentences, they're putting in they're implementing the ICE-T method, something wasn't clicking fully for them as writers. I looked at their comprehension skills. I looked at their writing skills. So I said, okay, let's make a 3rd grade literary analysis writing checklist based on their strengths and weaknesses, and give me a catchy tune for it, or a catchy name for it, because they can't have it with them all times in life when they're writing and editing, and especially on the NJSLA, they can't have a checklist in front of them. So we came up with the ITOPCC, check your work to get a 3 method. And we used this the last time when we wrote. So now I implemented, I went from just the iced tea with my extra 2 added added sweet sentences to now the iced tea, and with my MMM, which are the guided sweet sentences, right? So make it your own. What
Yeah,
does it mean?
I think that make it your own piece is where the thinking came in, because they
Right.
were able to pull that quotation out, but they were just plopping it into the organizer. And when we asked them to make it your own and put that quote into their own words and then elaborate on what it meant, right? Then
For
that's where they
sure.
really had to stop and think about it.
For
But just
sure.
before you go on to talk
Yeah.
about the checklist,
Go ahead.
how did you teach into those 3 sentences? The make it your own, what does it mean? And I'm sorry, what was the other one? Make it your own,
Make it your own. What does it mean, and why does it matter?
why does it matter? Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course.
Why does it matter? The most important
Why does it
thing.
matter? Right. So, and and they came up with, oh, how does this connect back to the theme? I'm like, whoa, that's so awesome. They were actually really having a good time. And you know what they said to me? This really makes it a little bit easier to understand what that E means. What does that explanation mean? What do we have to write there? Because that's hard to know as a third grader what to write and how to explain a quote to prove a claim.
Right.
So we practiced. So ChatGPT told me, practice with your class. First of all, rehearsing it. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. I'm going to come back to my meet. Okay. So we first orally rehearsed it, which was great for third graders. So I would say something like, Jeanine, the kindness is everywhere. Sprinkle it all over. And you would say to me, oh, so Robyn, what you mean is everyone should be kind in the world. And wherever you see everybody, sprinkle them with kindness. So that oral rehearsing piece before we even put that MMM into the iced tea on paper was super important for them.
Yeah, that's great. And then, I know that at different points in the day, you are backing all of this up with the targeted comprehension instruction, giving them do nows or putting it into the Google Classroom or giving them activities that were targeting the comprehension, which is going to help them be able to interpret a quote and put it into their own words. So it really was, I think you're right, full circle, is a great name for this episode, because we were really coming around and putting all these pieces together. But the last piece is the one where we were like, okay, now we do have to address the mechanics, because the sentence structure and the mechanics have been an issue. So
Right, absolutely. So then we finally started to put all of this in writing and starting using this checklist, the last writing piece, to make sure that we're doing all of this, right? So do we have our I in our introduction? Is it strong? Did we restate it? Do we have our text evidence? Do we have our 3M sentences? Did we put our ideas in order? If it was a narrative, did we have a beginning, middle, end? Did we use our transition words? If it was not a narrative, is it in sequential order? And are we talking about our writing in a cohesive manner? Does it have a strong conclusion? And then this was the one that really I love. Did you clean it up? And, before this, they didn't even know what the word convention meant. And when we sat and talked about it, now they're using it to me with, in a sentence to me, they're like, we checked our conventions. So it's so cute to see them really like taking on this, being held accountable for themselves and checking their work. And they went back and they checked for capitalization and spelling. And that really kind of took me full circle. I took the iced tea. I did the MMM. We're still getting a 2. I added the editing checklist in. And then I'm going to show you our students' piece of writing for this week. Okay. And here was the prompt. And this, mind you, was all on their own. This was a simulation. I did not help them. And here is the students' writing. I'm just going to zoom out for a minute so you can kind of just see it, and then I'll put it back in.
Wow. And that's in the same 45-minute period?
Correct.
Wow.
And then I'm getting to the really good part. Are you ready, Jeanine?
You're going to have to zoom in for me.
Okay, I'm going to zoom in.
Oh my goodness. We've moved from 1s and 2s to 3 and low 4. I'll take it.
Yes. And you know what? And again, this to me, this is making that student a better writer
Mhm.
because they're being held accountable for putting their knowledge of content from what they read into their writing, but also editing and making it meaningful.
Right. Right. And I just, we've struggled with this idea of teaching to the test and being formulaic and all of that. And I mean, for myself, I'll say it was a little hard to put aside, not really put aside, but to kind of teach into it that way, because I suppose I just am so immersed in writing process that this felt like, oh, do we really want to teach writing like this? But I am seeing some value in really providing this highly structured approach as a scaffold for students who just weren't grasping it. And if we had to be honest with ourselves, when we looked at that first round of writing sample, maybe a different group of students, we might approach it differently. But the first go rounds, they really didn't know where to start. They were really quite low. So to see them approaching 3s and 4s now is pretty incredible. So good
For
stuff.
sure. And that's the great thing about ChatGPT and Magic Schools and these AI tools that we use to enhance our teaching, because even if we had a different set of students next year, you still can differentiate and target the instruction based on their specific data. So I might not approach this the same next year exactly. I might approach it a little bit differently depending on the learners who are in front of me. But what's nice about going back and forth with ChatGPT is that it gives you that that knowledge of all of these different kinds of tools and supports to put into your classroom, and then you as the teacher make that decision what's best for your students.
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting. This was a great debrief. I can't wait to see what they're going to do next. I feel like they're so ready for whatever comes next. They have such a nice, strong foundation. So all good stuff.
Yes, they're becoming lifelong learners.
Yes, yes. So mission accomplished.
Yes.
But I know that we actually had the opportunity, on a slightly different note, going off on a tangent, we had the opportunity this week to meet with another grade level to talk to them about, possibly doing some AI analysis of their students' work, or riffing with ChatGPT to do some planning. So that was kind of exciting. And we also had an opportunity to speak with some members of our PTA who were also interested in learning, like, how can we apply AI to the work that we're doing. So it's been a great growing experience for us too. When people come to us and ask us questions, it gives us another opportunity to learn, teach, and lead. So yeah, it's been a great week.
Awesome week. We'll see you next week.
Okay, see you next week. Thanks,
Bye.
Robyn. Bye.